Warning: the following contains explicit language and subject matter that may not be suitable for younger listeners, church folk, and people who enjoy kale smoothies.
There was an idea. Stark knows this. Called the Avengers Initiative. The idea was to bring together a group of remarkable people. See if they could become something more. See if they could work together when we needed them to fight the battles that we never could. Phil Coulson died still believing in that idea. In heroes.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to A Pod Amongst Men. I'm your host, Steve B. This week, we are doing a special collaboration episode with LeVar and Tony O, the two hosts of the Dad's List podcast, two gentlemen out of Atlanta. And what we're doing is we're recording an episode together, and we're going to both release it on our respective platforms. And you guys can let us know what you think. I have full faith that this is going to be a good episode. We're going to talk about some dad stuff. We're going to be talking about marriage and husbandhood, being in love, and trying to create the best and healthiest marriage we can for the sake of us, our spouses, and our kids. So I really believe there's going to be a lot of good stuff in this episode. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Here it is, my interview with LeVar and Tony O of the Dad's List podcast.
All right, we're good.
Let's see. 1 second, 2 seconds. All right, we're rolling now.
All right, so.
All right, hey, so.
Go ahead, man.
Go ahead. Okay, I was going to say, it's nice to meet you guys. I listened to a few of the episodes already, and, likewise, I like what you guys are all about. I like the whole idea of just dads being open with another, talking about all the things that we go through on a daily basis and how our lives have changed a lot as we've entered fatherhood, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I've been enjoying your episodes. I'm glad you guys reached out.
Most definitely. We, like I said, we checked out yours, and just through listening to who you are and kind of how you represent yourself and represent fatherhood, that was definitely something that made me want to reach out to you, because it was very much in alignment with what we believe in and what we talk about on our podcast too. So
definitely. So how did you guys start the show originally? Like how do you guys even know each other?
That's actually very interesting. Tony, you want to? Well, I'll start off with
you start.
How it got started, and then Tony will tell us about how we connected. So about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, I was going through this phase where I'm just like, I want to make sure I'm doing something I'm very passionate about. I had a solid job that I had for, with a company I've been around for 10 years. And I've always been an entrepreneur in my heart, but I've always wanted to make sure I was doing something that I was very passionate about, not just selling something. And so I actually, in a soul searching moment, realized that what I am most passionate about is fatherhood. And I know that I've always been a very active father. I have 4 kids, 8, 6, 5, and a 1.5-year-old. Actually, the 1.5-year-old is going to be 2 years old in December. And so I knew I was very passionate about my children, about being a father and how active I've been and the things that I've done. I have conversations and give advice all the time to other dads, young dads. I receive feedback and information from other guys, and I just realized there's so much information that, that we could definitely represent by representing the right things of what a dad looks like. And especially when you look on TV and you see, how a dad is perceived in media and on sitcoms and things like that. I couldn't align myself with a lot of those characters sometimes. And so the idea was first, let me create a presence before I can talk about being a father. Let me establish myself as a father on social media. So I created an Instagram account and called it the Dad's List. And the Dad's List is all about our list of values, goals, and milestones in the pursuit of, achieving our legacy. Right. And so I just started that Instagram account showing pictures of me and the kids and videos of the experiences and things that we're doing and doctor's appointments and the whole nine. And once I got to a point where I realized it's not just about me, it's about representing these other fathers and people that I know and other fathers out there. That's when I started to, interview other people. It started in written format, and I had guys fill out, kind of tell their story, and we posted on the website. And it kind of just went right into this thing where a good friend of mine just said, man, you'll probably get more submissions if people just talk to you versus being intimidated about trying to fill out their whole story. And so I said, all right, well, maybe my friend suggested that I start a podcast, and I was like, ooh, okay, let's all right, maybe I'll try that. But so that was the reason why I decided to start a podcast. But at this point, it was just in theory and it was just in thought. And then I heard about this event through a good friend that's called Dads on Tap. And at this point, this is where I'll let Tony pick it up, how we connected.
Yeah, so I'll rewind just a little bit because my story is a little similar to Jay's in that it kind of hit a point in my life where I wanted to, I guess, do something a little bit different, something that was meaningful to me. And so my thing was actually starting a blog. So my blog's called The All Around Life, and really what it was telling stories, and particularly my stories, of life things that have happened, and how to live life to its absolute fullest. And what it really means is going through life, it's not supposed to be all happy-go-lucky, but a full life actually has lots of different experiences from great victories to tragedy to boredom and everything in between. So all the different seasons of life. And so that was kind of like my whole thing in writing the blog. And then moving forward, found out about Dads on Tap, and it was just a great opportunity to connect with some people that I knew. And I really got behind the idea of being with other dads, encouraging other dads, because that really fit with what I was doing with the blog. And so Jay and I sat down together, with a mutual friend. The friend, Tony, he was actually another Tony. We interviewed him on the podcast at some point, and we just sat down. We just started talking and kind of sharing what each other was doing. Like, hey, we should start a podcast. let's start doing
and that's
this.
That's the genesis.
Yeah, and the way that we talked, it seemed to work out real well. And Jay's got some, skills with all the social media. I'm more of a Gen Xer, and so I'm not as good with social media.
It's definitely it's not our natural go-to as human beings. It's definitely an acquired skill.
It is, but that so that's kind of how everything. That's how everything started. And when we decided to do it, we kind of said, "All right, well, here's what we got to do, and let's just put our heads down and grind this out, and let's get going and start putting some work in, and turn it from an idea into something that was real."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I really respect the fact that you guys have been able to do it as a team too, because I find it's really hard to find people, even close friends and people you really, you value and you hold their opinions to in high regard.
Right.
It's hard to find somebody who's really on the same wavelength. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to like fatherhood, and even if you get into social issues and everything that's going on today, it's just, it gets complicated, and you get to the point where there's a few too many chefs in the kitchen, so to speak.
Right.
And
it's funny because a year ago we had no clue who we were.
That's right.
So we're what, 10 months into this relationship, and several episodes into a podcast, which is kind of cool. So I agree with you.
That's all it takes. It's once you find someone who's on that same page, the rest just kind of takes care of itself, right?
Yep. And how about you, man? How'd you kind of get into or decided to pull the trigger and creating a podcast?
So for me, I work in construction. I'm an electrician, and most of the time, my job involves me just being kind of on my own for a while. just a lot of measurements and reading blueprints and stuff like that. So I have a lot of time to myself. I listen to podcasts all day, every day, pretty much. And I just got married 2 years ago, and
nice.
I became
Congrats.
thank you. I became a stepfather. So I had big changes in my life, and I was kind of at the beginning, I was struggling to find my balance in, the way how much my life had changed in just a short span of time. I went from living alone for almost 9 years straight to now having a wife, a son, and also two in-laws living with me. So I started searching for podcasts related to the stuff that I was struggling with, like fatherhood being one of them. I was afraid,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to mess up. I feel like fatherhood is one of the most important jobs we ever do, and the last thing I want to do is mess that one up. So I came across this podcast called 36 Chambers of Fatherhood. It's these two guys from New York City, and it was just them having honest conversations about being dads, and they had young kids, and I identified with it. I was like, man, like I just feel like I'm not the only one going through these kind of things, and I felt really good. And you know what? I've been thinking about doing something creative. I used to be in bands. I was involved in music, and I said, podcast could be something cool. And I just was kind of trying to figure out where exactly I wanted to go, which lane I wanted. And I'm like, well, what's the thing that I have in common with, a lot of people? Just being a guy, being a man, whether that entails being a
Mm-hmm.
father, it's just anything about life as a man in the 21st century in the post Me Too world, so to speak.
Right.
Now we're in this period of rapid change in society, and I figured what would be a positive thing to do, and I could say, well, these are all the things that I'm struggling with. Maybe there's other guys out there struggling with them too. Maybe we could have honest conversations and kind of all help each other move forward and progress as men instead of being left behind. Like, you see so many guys are just kind of stuck in their old ways, so to speak.
Right.
So I wanted to do something constructive, and that seemed like the best idea for me. Something I could do where I feel like I'm more effective than just sending angry messages to people on Facebook and arguing about politics. So this was it. I figured I could do something that would kind of highlight the things that we have in common, even with people that are very, extremely different from us, come from totally different backgrounds and circumstances. The one thing is just us being men and how we want to be better and progress as a gender, even.
Awesome.
And this is my solution to that.
Yeah, it's good because I think it's very important when you talk about coming from different backgrounds and we talk about fatherhood. You hear from all sorts of different dads, and there's so many different experiences. Yet there's that thread that kind of goes through that ties us all together, and that's being a father and caring for our kids and wanting the best for our kids. And not all fathers are like that. We've seen that, and I mean we've heard that in stories about our own fathers throughout different stories that we've heard. We've heard some common things like hey, I didn't have any support. I went through some really tough things, and I felt like I was all alone. We've heard that tons of times here, and so podcasts like this and like yours are great resources for like you said, you were looking for, you didn't know how to do it, so you had to look somewhere to find out how to do it. You were kind of I don't want to say kind of dumped into it, but having a marrying in and having a stepchild is a big deal. So how old how old was he when he when you got married then?
So we got married in December 2017, and when I first met my now wife was in 2015, and eventually, so that was in like fall of 2015. The following February is when I first met him. He had just turned 5. So ever since then, like he's a great kid, and we were kind of fast friends. So my background, I'm a bit into like the nerd culture, like comic books, movies, anything like that.
Right.
Game of Thrones, Star Wars, Harry Potter, all that good stuff. Especially Ninja Turtles. And it just so happened that my son Tyler, at the time, he was very big into Ninja Turtles. I said, "Hey, great, we're gonna get along just fine because I know almost everything there is to know about it."
You've been involved in the movies and the cartoon and all the other stuff with it.
Oh yeah, it's kind of a very fortuitous thing to happen. Is that now all the stuff that was popular when we were kids is coming back again, and
Right,
it's
it
like,
is.
hey, we have a good bonding point right there, something we can really share. So right now, me and my son's favorite thing to do is play Pokemon together.
Oh, true.
So, but it's a great thing because now it made that introduction a lot easier. He sees me as someone he could talk to because we like the same stuff. We can play together. So we got me and my wife got married in 2017, and at the time she was living in Miami and I live in New Jersey. So we'd been doing a long distance
Oh,
for
wow.
2 years before our marriage. And her and her son, they came up here, and her parents followed also, so they live with us as well. So all of a sudden, yeah, I went from having my own house, my own little bachelor pad, to having a full house and an
Right.
instant family.
So what
So it's it certainly, yeah, it came with its fair share of growing pains, but I'm happy to say that we've been really good at finding a balance and making everything work.
I was going to
And
ask what that transition looked like, because I mean that's not an easy transition to have that bachelor pad to then be filled with family, and you said even your in-laws were living with you, right?
yeah, well, I mean, it's not as quiet anymore. I'll start off by saying that. And it definitely looks a lot nicer in here now that there's no woman's touch.
Yeah, that
Like I
bachelor
don't have,
decorating, you can pretty much do whatever you want, right?
yeah, I mean, I don't have just entirely empty rooms anymore. But it was a little tough because obviously going from Miami to New Jersey is a big change.
Right.
So luckily, the change seemed to be easiest for my son. He started at a new school, and he took to it like a duck in water. And for me and my wife, I think the biggest adjustment was really just in being married and living together because
Right.
everything was different for her. And I was really trying to bend over backwards to make that as easy as possible. And between the three of us, I'm sure I could have done a better job at some points. So all credit to my wife, who's a very patient woman. She's Cuban, so she's certainly got quite a bit of fire to her, which, as anybody with any Cuban friends would know, you don't get too many second chances with them. So I had to learn pretty quick. It's kind of a trial by fire. But no, I mean we've been able to make it work, and it hasn't always been easy, that's for sure. But I think the key is that we've always been very clear that it's all love. There's
Right.
always love, even if we're angry, if all we want to do is scream at one another. There's always love there. So for it's actually because my wife has the fire, I have the part of I'm part Irish, and the Irish is kind of just like, all right, we'll just take all our emotions and kind of force them down and hide them for the rest of our life, and one day we'll die, and that's kind of our approach. So for me, it's my natural instinct to kind of take a step back and try to cool down, and that's been a perfect. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but a perfect counter to
Mhm.
her. So we've been able to make it work, and it just so happens that our own individual approaches work well together.
Good.
So, and my in-laws, they've been great. They've super respectful of like the fact that oh no, it's your house. No, 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 we all live here now.
That's
So
awesome.
you guys don't have to ask permission to do things like this. We share this space. So it kind of like the perfect situation where everybody is coming to it with cool heads and a lot of patience and a lot of love. And I don't think if it wasn't for that, we probably wouldn't have been able to make it work.
Right. Right. Well, since we've been talking
So
about our families, Tony, kind of let his viewers know, what your setup looks like.
Yeah, so I have a wife and I have a son who is 10 years old. So that is my wife's stepson. She met him when he was 3. He had just turned 3, and then we were married shortly after that. So and then recently, we now are in the process of getting full custody of Kristen's niece, Jolie. and my son's name is Jackson. And actually, November, so less than a month, we actually have a court date to go up to Ohio for all that to be finalized, for us to have. Unfortunately, it's not adoption. We love to have adopted her, but we're just going to have full custody, legal guardianship of her. And so she's 3 now, and that's, man, she is a little fireball running around here with lots of personality. And Jackson spends most of the time over at his mom's house, and we kind of do the divorced, parent thing with weekends and all that. So, every other weekend I have Jackson. I do get him every Monday, which is nice because it's a set day during the week. And I like having some not just weekend fun time, but also just like regular parenting time with him. And obviously all the vacations and stuff. So that's kind of what my family looks like here. We've definitely had our fair share of challenges in parenting through some of the divorce, stuff, and having just different various things that pop up time and again with Jackson's mom and stepdad over there. So Jackson actually has. He has a stepdad. He has a sister over there on that side who's also 3. And a brother, and I think he's 1. So he was just born not that long ago. So he's kind of got a full family, and of course he's having to balance, both households and different dynamics in those households. And he went very quickly from being kind of king of the castle to now having to share a lot of that stuff. And for a long time, this was kind of
7 years solo.
Yeah, like a little refuge over here. And then we're like, surprise, Jackson, you're not the only one here anymore. And, it's been a struggle.
Hey, all that stuff that was yours, you now have to share it.
Yeah. Well, we told him, you stay down, like, you want your space, it's downstairs. You got to stay downstairs. If you don't want her touching it, because she's 3 and she's going to touch it if it's up, if it's up in the living room or whatever. So. But he's learning
Absolutely.
that he's adjusting real well. And Jolie is adjusting well. We've had some struggles there, a lot of potty training things, and she's behind because of her situation. But she's really made some incredible leaps and bounds in just so many different areas, and seeing her kind of come alive. Before it was very much just, you're safe here, you're okay. To now she's, singing and dancing on her own. She is so funny in how she sings to songs and makes up songs and dances around, just very creative. And so to see her kind of come alive and flourish a little bit has been fun to see. So it's like, for my wife and I, being able to provide that environment for her has been real awesome. Like I said,
it's a beautiful thing, man.
Oh yeah, no, I know. And it just, for me to look at what her life, may have been, or, just the opportunities and chances that she may not have been, have, and to know that we're able to provide some of that stuff for her. I'm really looking forward to seeing, the type of person that she becomes. And just, that's, I don't even know the right way to say this, but, to knowing that we're able to help provide that for her is just, it's something that, I just know it's the right thing to do. So
definitely. Hey, I mean, that's I take my hat off to you, man. That's a really noble and honorable thing you're doing, especially just for the well-being of the kid. And that's, it's just a great thing. Not a lot of people would step up like that.
Right.
I think that speaks volumes about a person's character.
Well, before you go too far, took me about a year to come around to it. So my answer to my wife was, no, this is not happening. We are not bringing another child here. With all this stuff going on, it's just not going to happen. And, and it really was a year. It took a year for me to come around and, just to see that the situation, that she was in, was not getting better. And, that was really my hope, is like, okay, I want this to get better. I want her to be with her mom. We can support them from here as best we can, but, I just can't do it,
I hear you.
to coming around to it and said, all right, if this is going to happen, I have to be all in it. I'm not going to be halfway. So if my heart's only halfway in it, we're not going to do it. And there was a turning point for me where it was like, okay, my heart says yes, and so I'm in, and I'm going to make this, because it's a big commitment. We're going to be her
Huge.
mom and dad for the next 15 years and beyond. But to raise her as a child, for the next 15 years, and I'm getting older, and start thinking about that, that as well. But once it turned, I was like, that's it. I'm in. We're going for this, and I'm going to go for it with everything I got.
But
that's awesome.
Man. But that's real though, and that's one of the key things that podcasts like this is so important, because how many other men are facing that decision, right? It's like they're thinking about themselves, right, and how they feel and what's important to them and their livelihood and what they had plans for, and then at the same time they want to do the right thing, or they feel like this is something, it's a great opportunity or for the benefit of the child, and so sometimes you're conflicted. But where are you going to go sometimes to actually hear the thoughts of somebody else who had a difficult decision to make as well, and be able to say, okay, I'm not selfish for thinking like this, or even if I am selfish, it's understandable, right? Like I'm not, so, okay, here's another guy who had a similar situation, and now it took him a year. Here I am. I've been tripping for 2-3 weeks on this decision. This guy took a year. I don't feel as bad, or at least I know, this is something that's heavy enough that's worth making sure I'm all in for, right? So it's commendable, but at the same time, it's real that you're able to share with the audience that it wasn't an easy answer, yes, because there's so many other factors that's involved with it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that's really the service that we provide, is just, sharing our experiences with other guys to make people realize that what they're feeling, it's not just them. Like you said, this is something that a lot of us go through, and just kind of opening up our own lives to total strangers, really.
Right.
It's very helpful. I mean, I could imagine right now, if I had been in your situation, I don't know. I've seen the original Kings of Comedy. I don't want to be like Bernie Mac, I got my sister's kids. They live with me, like that's the first thing I thought of. But
right.
Yeah, it's just like you said, those experiences, the struggles that we've gone through.
Right.
That's the thing that could, maybe other people can learn from our experiences, even our mistakes.
Right.
And man, listen, that's just a beautiful thing all around.
And I'll share now. So basically, I mentioned to you guys I already have 4 kids, but my wife and I, we've been married. This January is going to make 13 years of marriage, and we have 4 kids. And I think one of the things that makes our situation a little unique is that our 5-year-old son, Jai Nathaniel, he is on the spectrum. So he is autistic, as well as he has processing disorder. So everything from all the senses, taste and all that kind of stuff is an issue for him. And so like right now he's nonverbal. He also doesn't eat. Only thing he eats is he drinks Ensure, and that's the only way he gets his full meal, so to speak. And he drinks apple juice and water, but that's basically it. And we are very grateful, because even just on an all Ensure diet, he's still able to stay on the right track when we go to the pediatrician and see that his body weight and everything is still on track the way it's supposed to be. But that was a big curveball for us, because he was our 3rd child, and we didn't think we had parenting down, but we started to create our own method of how we parent and younger kids. So by the time we realized that he was autistic, and we got him diagnosed, and we realized our life was going to be a little different, that was what kind of shifted our way of thinking to, all right, we got to do whatever it takes to take care of our son. And so there's a serious cost involved with having a kid with special needs. There's a lot of sleepless nights. There's a lot of research that I tip my hat to my wife, because 90% of all the things that we know and we've done to help my son is because of her research and her reaching out and making phone calls to get him as much help and therapy as possible. All the free programs, all the paid stuff, the stuff that the insurance has to take care of, all of that, my wife did all that research to get him the best care as much as possible. So that has probably been the biggest adjustment and struggle for us. And every day gets better. He doesn't speak on his own, but he's starting to repeat after us in certain words. So he'll repeat and say mama, dada. And he watches a lot of shows on his iPad, and he'll repeat phrases that he hears on the TV show from Mickey Mouse House, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse and things like that. Mm-hmm. But it's progress, and we're grateful. And it's just a matter of time before we believe that he'll just start cussing us out in English. So
you don't have him watching the Kings of Comedy on his
we do. I'm watching a lot of Daniel Tiger. Yeah. So things that he can actually learn from at the same time.
It's funny you said your wife is the one that's done a lot of the research. Shout out to all three of our wives, I think, because I think it's fair to say that wives are much better researchers than husbands. What do you guys think about that? I mean, I feel like so much stuff about parenting and about the house, my wife will come at me and say, oh, look, I found this and I was reading about this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm just going to, I'm going to default to you because you seem like you know what you're talking about.
Yep. Look, I've been unapologetic about it. I've always said for years that my wife helps our kids thrive and I help them just survive. So when it's just me and the kids at the house and my wife's running errands or doing whatever she has to do, my goal is to keep everyone alive. That is it. She'll come home and she said, hey, did you feed them on time? I was like, I mean, I fed them, but I don't know if it was on your time frame.
Or it was on time. They ate before they died.
Right.
Yeah.
They're full.
As dads were kind of just doing like zone coverage. She's got the man-to-man coverage.
Exactly. Yeah. We just had that conversation the other day. Me and Tony were just talking about that.
That's funny.
I'll make sure they don't get out of the house, but once they're in there, that's going to be on you.
Right, exactly. So there's times where she was like, oh, well, what did you feed them? I said, oh, okay, I'm giving macaroni and cheese for dinner. And she was like, they just had that for lunch. And I was like, it still accomplished the goal. They're full.
Yeah. I mean, they ate. They're not going to bed with empty stomachs.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I think with my wife is so she does some of the research, but I think with her, she leads a lot of times not with research, but she leads with her heart on some things. Yep. So it takes me into a lot of places that are uncomfortable because I'm like, no, we're good. This is fine. We're established. We're stable. Stop rocking the boat. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh no, but Jolie, and I wasn't there, and she's been, she was there. Way ahead of time. She was ready. Like, all right, I want to go now. I'm going to go get her. And it's like, right. hold on. She went off and started her own salon. She's a hairstylist and started her own salon. And that was a big deal for her to go off and do that. And at the time, her sister had actually, her youngest sister had actually committed suicide. And for her to go off and do this at that time in a way that would honor her sister was amazing. But it was like this big lead with her heart, and it was like, oh gosh, are you ready for this? And I'm like, okay, I'm starting to crunch all the numbers, and what's it going to cost? How does this affect our budget? What's going to do with our taxes? We got to start thinking about insurance and all of these things. And she's like, no, it's all going to work out. It's going to work out. Like, but you don't know it's going to work. You don't know it's going to work out.
Oh man.
And I worried and fretted about that. And it did, in the end, she knew what she was doing. And even with Jolie, she knew what she was doing. And she's led in those ways in our family and have taken me to some uncomfortable places and stretched me as a man, because I've had to learn, really the thing for me was learning how to love my wife. That's really what I've had to learn, because she's so different than so different than I am that it's and I thought I knew some, like, okay, I know the woman that I married or whatever, and I'm learning that I don't, man. I got to keep learning. I got to keep studying,
Yes.
because there's
Yeah,
so much more to her than what I thought, which is great.
yeah, you're always going to be learning. Yeah. No matter how much you think you know them, you're always learning more.
Mhm.
There's always something new every single day. It's crazy. I've had it. You sound like you've been tapping my phones. What you just said, because it's the same kind of conversations me and my wife have. She's like, "Now listen, it's gonna work out." I'm like, "There's no possible." You're just saying that. You're just saying that. You don't know.
know.
You don't know.
Yeah. And I don't want to be the Debbie Downer. So I'm like, okay, babe. If that's what you say. And then in my head, secretly, I'm like, oh my God, I don't think she's thinking this through. I don't think she knows what she's talking about. But I would never say that to her.
Mhm.
But um,
Yeah, and I
yeah.
found.
So,
Oh, go ahead.
oh no, go ahead. I was gonna, but if you got something else to say
I was just going to say
regarding that.
that, what I've found that my role has been in a lot of ways, and this may be similar to a lot of a lot of fathers, is when you start looking at like a tree and its branches, or like even and maybe a flower is a better, but like the stem of a flower, and then the bloom, the blossom of the flower, and really that's what my wife is. And so and in a lot of ways I found that my role in our marriage is to be just the stable, the stable one, to
Mm-hmm.
to be strong, to um, provide kind of that, a little bit of a home base, if you will, where she
Mm-hmm.
can kind of go off a little bit on a limb and try some things, and I'll be here and provide some of that stability for her, so that she can do that, so that she can blossom and be creative and beautiful in the things that she thinks and creates, and it's great that I get to see and be a part of really her just coming alive in the person that she is. And honestly, that's how I feel with my family as well. With Jolie and with Jackson, um, is to be the kind of man where they can always come back here. They can always talk to me. I want to be steady. I want to be reliable. We talk about just different values, things that we value as a father, and those are things that I value in myself. That I want these things to be true of me, because I believe that they're what's best for my family, and to be someone that's reliable and that they can count on, allows them some freedom to go off and do things and try things and experiment and figure out who they are. And so that's I'm learning that that role as a father and those things, and so those are things that I work on, because I'm not always good at those all the time.
How about you, Steve? I mean, I love that we're on the topic of talking about our wives, and for those who have significant others in the relationship, that's a huge part of being a dad and a good dad. There are plenty of single fathers out there, and kudos to them, and the support that you're getting and that you may not be getting. But for those of us who do have a significant other, we have to make sure we give credit where credit is due. And I know it's a subject we're going to talk about in the future podcast about what are the things that they do better than we do, and
Mm-hmm.
and how we progress as men. What does that look like? So for you, Steve, how's your relationship been with your wife, and what role does that play in making you a better father?
So with my wife, it's definitely very similar to the way Tony was describing his relationship, where I'm kind of the baseline, so to speak, and my wife can kind of go a little more up and down. Whereas I kind of feel like the way I was taught by my stepfather is that you need to be steady. You need to be the rock that people can cling to in times of crisis,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, as a husband now, and also as a father, that's when it really becomes solidified in your head, is when you realize, hey, there's people depending on me. This is not the time to screw around. So that was a wake up call for me, a little reality check. Like, okay, we're not little kids anymore. You're not just some single guy going out partying every weekend.
Right.
This is time to step up because, when I have to step back in my situation, I have these four people that just completely upended their entire lives and moved halfway across the country because of me.
Right.
Ostensibly, it all comes down because of me, because I pursued my wife. I wanted to maintain this long distance relationship and keep pushing and progressing with it. I've changed these people's lives around. They all moved. They're originally from Cuba, then they came to the U.S. and they're coming to New Jersey, and it's like three different worlds. So for me, it was really just kind of embracing that responsibility and just getting used to carrying that weight. And, at first it may seem a little heavy, but I think over the past 2 years, I've kind of just gotten accustomed to it. And I found that happy medium. I found that routine, where everything just kind of falls into place week by week. We know what we can do, what things we can't swing. And I think for me, one of my shortcomings was that after being alone on my own for so long and really not having to worry about anyone else,
Right.
is that now I'm sharing my time. I'm not making decisions just impulsively on my own. I have to consider what other people, how they're going to feel and how they're going to be impacted by the things I do. And that has been one of the kind of like the flashpoints for me and my wife, is that, I, I instinctively just decide on something, and then I have to look back and like, crap, I didn't even ask her
Right.
what she wanted. And then I have to kind of walk back with my head hung, like, babe, I did this. I'm sorry I didn't ask you. I know I messed up, and I'm learning. I'm not perfect.
Right.
And she, credit to her that she's understanding that I'm not going to get it perfectly right away. But yeah, for me, that's the biggest thing, is just that adjustment from being on my own to having other people, around that are impacted by my decisions.
Yeah. No, that's big, man. And, you talk about growing and still learning, especially in a marriage. It's so important. My wife and I, like I said, this January is going to make 13 years that we've been married. And even as recent over the past 2 weeks, we've had a serious level of conversation around who we are as individuals and how does that mesh years later after we've gone through a lot. I mean, we've gone through all kind of stuff, from multiple miscarriages to foreclosure on a house to cars repossessed to you name it, being broken than a joke. We've had all kind of
Yep.
scenarios, and we're grateful for those experiences because we're at a point now where she says it and I say it, but that's my ride or die. And not because it's a cliche statement, but she's still here. You know what I mean? And we're still very much in love, and we still have each other's backs. But when people say love is not enough, right? It's about understanding. And we joked around all the time when we talk to people, and part of the conversation would be, well, out of 100 things, we're completely different on 95% of it, but the 5 things that, or the 5% that we are on the same page with, those are like our core values. And that's what's kept us together. The key thing is now a lot of those 95% things are becoming interferences because these are things that are part of our character and our personality, and they get in the way sometimes. It annoys me about certain things about her, and a lot of things about me, it annoys her, and sometimes that has an impact. So for us to be able to communicate more effectively and not just say, hey, I'm upset, and then just walk away, but literally getting closure and being able to communicate effectively has been so crucial to our marriage, which has now made me a better father. You'll hear in different episodes of our podcast where I have 1 daughter and 3 boys, and my daughter is my oldest, and I'm still struggling with learning how to raise a girl. And she's going to be 9 in November next month. But man, talking to her is like talking to a 16-year-old.
Oh yeah.
Or if not older. She's very intelligent, very aware of her surroundings, very aware of society and what's going on. And I can't BS her on a lot of things. You know what I mean? Like, she's really aware of what's going on. So there's times where I just have a hard time with communicating with her, or sometimes I'm a little bit too stern. But because my wife and I have been having this dialogue about that 95% that we've kind of swept under the rug for so long about being different, she's helping me to understand how to be a better father, and how to treat my daughter differently, and how to, when it's appropriate to say things or not say things, or when I need to apologize versus she needs to just feel that pain, And but again, that I said all that to say that it is so important to make sure we're on the same page with our wives or our significant others, because that does play a major role in how we parent and how we are as fathers. And it's just something that needs to be said.
So Jay,
Definitely.
I need you to ask your wife one thing, and that's and hopefully you've learned this since your daughter's further along than mine. Why do they cry so much?
Bruh, man,
boy.
so it's so funny, and this may offend some, but it's okay. We're keeping it real. When the last child was definitely not planned, and so my wife was like, man, I hope it's a girl, because she was hoping that we would have the fourth kid to be a girl to kind of round it off.
Mm-hmm.
2 boys and 2 girls. And then my daughter, she's over here begging and praying for a little sister, companion, and the whole 9. And so I'm like, we almost didn't have more kids because my daughter was the first one and stressed us out. So I want another boy. Boys are way easier based on our current experience. And so finally, when it was a boy, my daughter was like livid, and she was through the roof. We actually have a video that recorded of the baby reveal. Yeah, it was so funny. But basically, she was mad at God, saying, "God, you knew I wanted a girl. you knew I wanted a sister. It's not fair, But
listen,
but my wife ended up. What's that?
Oh, as someone who has 6 sisters and no brothers,
yes,
I can tell you this.
Oh my god!
It's going to get more complicated. She's only 9 now.
See, my hunch was right, and that's the thing. But now years later, actually, it's like 2 years. My son's gonna be 2 years old. My wife is like, man, I'm so glad, because every time we have a riff with my daughter, or every time she's crying for no reason, or it seems like it's no reason, and when you try to hear her out, and it ends up being confirmed that it's no reason, we just both are like, see, aren't you glad we had another boy? Because could you imagine more than one? So, but yeah, it's been very up and down.
So there's something I wanted to ask you guys. What kind of situation did you come from, like family-wise, when you were growing up? I know for me, I come from a divorced background. My mom and dad split when I was 3, and my mom remarried right before I started first grade. And that's been my stepdad ever since then. And later on in life, after falling outs with my biological father, my stepdad ended up becoming more like a real father to me than my own biological father. Yeah. And that's definitely affected my life and my role as a stepfather now, not exponentially, but hugely. It's been a very big impact on my life, and has affected how I'm now raising my stepson. What's your upbringing like?
Tony, you're similar to that. You can go ahead.
Yeah. So my parents were, so it was me, and I have a brother who's a year younger than I am. And my parents were divorced when I was, and this is, for whatever reason, I always find it so weird that I never know the exact time. And I've never really asked for the exact time. I just kind of let it be. But I was probably about 4 or 5 years old. I think maybe closer to 4 when my parents were divorced. And then my dad, we lived in Michigan at the time. My dad moved back to San Antonio, where all his family's from. And my mom remarried a couple years after that. Well, she dated a guy for a while, and that I did not like. Man, I hated that guy for various reasons. So you can read a whole thing on my blog that I wrote about him, but we've put all that in the past. And
Must
then,
have been some guy.
yeah, some guy, Larry was his name, Larry and Little Larry. So then my mom remarried, and my stepdad, and really my stepdad became my dad. So very similar, to you, because we were always in the household with them. My real dad lived far away. I still had a relationship with him, and we would see each other as my family moved. My mom, my stepdad, my brother, and I, we moved around. We ended up back in Texas and Dallas, so it was a little bit easier. So from my middle school and high school years, easier to see him, to make that drive down. So got to see him a little bit more often. But even through that time, some of the relationship grew like more distant. And some of that was from just my dad, just false promises, I think really hurt our relationship. And I don't think that he ever had intended. I think he always had really good intentions, but I don't think he was always able or had the ability to follow through on some of those, whether it was, financial or anything else. And then he had also had, and so I had a sister, a brother, and a sister over on that side. And I never call anyone like half brothers, half sisters. They're half brothers, half sisters, but they're my brothers and sisters. And then my mom and stepdad had another brother, Pat, who's my brother, but we grew up with him, so I was closer to him than I was my brother and sister over on that side. But then go off to college, and my mom and stepdad got divorced. And so that was a real difficult period of time. There was a time I actually was closer to my stepdad during that time than I was to my mom. I spent a year.
I've seen that before in a couple of friends. I had a friend who had the same situation like that.
And I think it all depends on whatever the circumstances are. But it was a year or longer before I actually even spoke to my mom. And I look back and I'm like, yeah, that was a long time. I didn't even acknowledge her. She would call and I just wouldn't answer. And it really took a lot for me to come back around and, with my real dad.
How old were you at the time?
I was in college then. College, yeah,
Okay.
or past college, actually. I mean, gosh, young. I mean, mid to late 20s, I think, at the time. But it just had hurt me so much that it was really difficult for me to deal with. But I'd gone through and had just a time where I forgave my dad from some of those things, and we were able to have a good relationship, and then turn around and forgive my mom, and we have a good relationship now. I see my mom all the time. We talk all the time. She obviously, if she listened to this, she'd wonder why I don't talk more.
Right.
She could talk to me every day, but I'm like, you gotta give me some space. I'll call you.
Yeah.
But no, and I was very close to my stepdad. After some of that time, and during the marriage, he was there. He was my dad, but there was still some distance. Still some distance there. But I think over time, as all of us have aged, as all of us have matured, it's been easier to have relationship with them, and I'm glad that I have a relationship with them, because I call my stepdad all the time and talk to him and get really good advice from him. I look up to him in a lot of ways. And with my dad, my real dad, it's been more difficult only recently, because he had a stroke. And so it's difficult to talk to my dad now, because he doesn't talk like he used to. He can understand a lot of things, but he can't form the words or can't bridge those things that are in his mind to make them come out of his mouth. And it's very frustrating for him. And so the conversations with him are, there are times when he doesn't remember my name. He knows it. He absolutely knows it. And if you mention things in a certain way, he'll come up with it, just like that. But that's been just a very difficult thing.
Wow.
to go through. And so that's my family, my family dynamic, just kind of growing up. And really my brother and I, my full brother, Chris, and I, we fought like cats and dogs all the time. But we got much closer later in life. Unfortunately, now he's in prison now for some other things, and so that's kind of hurt. That's hurt me in some ways where I just it's like I miss my brother, because we were always very close. It was always Tony and Chris, always Tony and Chris together. You would never mention one without mentioning the other.
Yeah, that's tough. My only full biological sister, like I'm like you, I have all half sisters and a stepsister, and then one full sister. And my one full sister, we butted heads like nothing you've ever seen. It was like Professor X and Magneto growing up. Like we were polar opposites,
Wow.
and like our rivalry was just like legendary throughout school. Everybody knew that we just did not get along, and I kind of envy the people that really have good relationships with their siblings, just because I have so many and I only really talk to one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Family relationships for me have been really difficult because I feel as though I don't really fit in with the rest of my family. Like I don't feel like I'm on the same wavelength, and it's led to a lot of friction. And for people like you that have been able to have that good relationship, like I think that's a amazing thing, and not everybody's lucky enough to have that.
And you mentioned something there with just like,
was it Professor X and Magneto? You want to talk about X-Men? Because we could do that.
You threw in the
I'll throw it out.
reference. No,
Yeah.
Just with not feeling like you fit in, because that's I mean, honestly, if I got to tell my story, it's a lot of that, because my family up in Michigan. So and we have so my mom is my dad is Mexican, and my mom is white, for lack of a better term there.
Caucasian, whatever you want to go with.
And so
Gringo.
And so you have these different things, and so I'm kind of like in between. I don't fully fit with the white side and my family there. So there's times when I felt like an outsider. I don't think I saw it when I was growing up, but as I got older, I saw it more. And then with my family down in Texas, it's the same thing where, they love me and I get along with everyone, but there's just the sense that I don't really fully belong there, because all my family in Texas all live right there. They're all together.
Yeah.
And I have always been outside of that. And even in my own family, because of the, there's the various divorces, with my stepdad's family, not feeling like I, belong there either. And so that's always been a struggle of mine, is feeling like I belong somewhere, and feeling like I fit in.
Me as well, the same thing.
So it's interesting. I guess I'm the odd man out, because my upbringing was significantly different. I've always believed that we had the Huxtable lifestyle. My mom's been a nurse for God knows how long, and my dad always had a steady job, and it was me. I have a sister who's a year and 10 months younger than I am, and I have a brother that's 14 years younger than me. But we grew up, my family's Jamaican. I was born in Queens, New York, but raised in Fort Lauderdale, and that's all I knew. We went to church on Sundays. We came home, did homework, and then I played in the yard with the neighbors down the street, and we played football and basketball, and got to be home by the time the street lights come on, and everything that you would see like that comes off as textbook. I grew up with both my parents. That's all I knew. My parents, I witnessed my parents, running their household as a unit. Everything was shared bank accounts, shared everything. So all this, my money, versus your money, all that stuff is completely foreign to me. So that was my lifestyle growing up, and I wearing a suit all the time to church, the whole nine. And so growing up, by the time I got with my wife, actually, by even growing up, I was surrounded by friends who didn't have that lifestyle. So even more so, I just felt um, not out of place, but I just couldn't relate to a lot of other people and their scenarios, or having step parents and step half brothers and sisters. That just was foreign to me. All I knew was this cookie cutter family that I had, and that I was grateful for. And it wasn't until my wife and I got together, and my wife had a different background because she has half sisters, and and she also and she has a stepmother that raised her, and now her biological mother is more in her life now as an adult. Um, and then my parents, they got divorced I think it was the year I got married,
Oh man.
and so
Wow.
yeah, so it's to kind of have this Huxtable lifestyle growing up the whole time, and then by the time I'm starting my own family and my own journey, to see my parents divorce. And it was so interesting because they didn't divorce over infidelity or any of this other stuff. It was just, it almost felt like they literally grew apart. Like they ignored a lot of the red flags over the years, and it kind of just came to an end. And so,
Mm-hmm.
uh, so now as I'm starting my own relationship and my own marriage, I'm using my parents as a case study to some degree, because I'm able to witness what it was that I was used to growing up to now what I'm witnessing now. And it's very difficult because there was times where my dad thought I was taking my mom's side, and I'm an adult already, and there's times
Mm-hmm.
where it was flipped around. My mom thought I was taking my dad's side, and it became messy. And it put me in a place where I was like, you know what? I'm not a part of any of this anymore. I have to live my own life. I have a wife now. I'm going to have kids in the future. I have to focus on me. And so that's exactly what I did. And I kind of went too far to the left, because what ended up happening is I just isolated myself and insulated myself from everything else. And it was just about me and my family. And which I came to regret later on, because I saw the impact that it had on my mom and on my dad, and it took years before my dad and I can now have a really good relationship. Because now that I'm an adult, I saw the areas where I thought he was to blame, and I saw the areas where I thought my mom was to blame, and there was a little bit of resentment for me towards both of them equally. And so now I'm able to have an adult relationship with my dad. We're still father and son, but it's just more so our conversations are a lot different. And same thing with my
Mm-hmm.
mom. My mom and I are closer than we've ever been. But I know she would want to see me more and hear from me more. And my level of communication with both my parents are not where it should be. And my wife tells me that all the time. But it's work in progress. And I think I've identified who I am and where it clashes with my parents. And I'm very quick to remind myself of some of those different traits when I'm parenting, because or even not just parenting, but even as I'll see different aspects of my wife, and I'm like, nope, that doesn't work, because I remember my mom being like that, and that doesn't work for me. Or I'll start seeing traits in myself that my dad had, and I'm like, oh man. And my wife will point it out. She's like, you're just like your dad in this situation, and that bothers me. So it's again, it's just been a interesting journey to, like I said, start off with this Huxtable lifestyle to now seeing my parents divorce the year I got married. And now I just having all this turmoil that went down, and now to be at a place where we're just now getting really good. So
Definitely.
Yeah.
You you said something that I really feel strongly about, and it's about seeing those traits that your parents may have had that you may not have thought too highly of, and you see those in yourself. You see
yeah,
yourself doing something one of your parents had done when you were a kid that drove you nuts or that made you feel a certain way, and it's almost like that sudden fear. It's like, oh my god, I'm doing what my parents did, and I hope I'm not damaging my kid.
right,
And
right,
it's important to kind of step back and realize, like, okay, I went through it and I came out somewhat
somewhat
well
all right,
adjusted.
yeah,
Yeah. but I know for me that's been a major thing, because, and this is also one of the basis for my podcast too, is trying to take the experiences of previous generations and keep the things that worked and try to improve on the things that didn't. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I'm really trying to be very aware of all the things that, that my father did, that I feel maybe negatively impacted me, but also look at the positive things. I don't think anybody is totally bad or totally
Right.
good.
Of course.
So trying to kind of create, just cherry pick all the good things about that, and kind of carry that over to the next generation, because I feel like that's our duty as men now in the year 2019. We're raising the next generation of men.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're hoping to correct some of the things that we see now in society that are major problems, it's going to start with us. And we have to teach our sons and this young generation, these young men, they're going to be looking up to us, and we have to set the example and try to work on ourselves and be the role models that this generation needs.
Yeah, I've always,
This and that's.
I was gonna say,
Go ahead, Tony.
I've always said that, I don't raise kids. I'm not raising a boy. I'm not raising a girl. That I'm raising a man and a woman. And it's not that's my direction, because I don't want to end at 18 years old with my son, being a large, 18-year-old boy. I want him to be a man. And so I need to raise a man. I don't want to raise a child.
Right.
And that's always been that's been my focus with, with him. And Jay, you said something that was, it says like, oh, that's just like your dad. And I mean, I desperately want, for my son's wife and, for Jolie's husband, when they say, oh, that's just like your dad, and for that to be something that's a positive thing,
Right.
from when they say that, I would want that to be said of me. And that's what I work towards.
Yeah, most definitely, man. It's, I think this is great. This is a great conversation. And I feel like the level of connection that the three of us have, we're probably going to have to do this again some other time, because I think what I love about this episode today is just really, we got down to the roots. And again, Steve, one of the things we talk about on our podcast, or at least our slogan, is the things you think about but you don't talk about, right? And so that's what this conversation was really about, is a lot of the things that we think about but we don't talk about, especially as men, where we feel like we have to put this level of masculinity up, and this shield and this block, this barrier up from our real feelings, and sometimes how we felt growing up, or how it impacts us now as husbands and fathers. And I think we uncovered a lot. And I think it's great for our listeners to be able to hear this and know, again, that for both of our podcasts, this is a safe place that you guys can share and be able to be heard, as well as to learn from and grow from as well. So I appreciate you guys, man.
Oh, definitely. I really enjoyed this. I mean, I think that the three of us having such similar ideas of what we're trying to accomplish really lends itself well to these conversations. Especially like you said, there's a lot of guys out there who maybe just needed to hear that someone else is going through what they're going through. And I'm definitely getting much better about putting my my own stories out there, as far as personal things go, like family history and whatnot. And
not always easy.
I just think that
No.
What's that?
I said not always easy. Not always easy.
No, it's not. There's always that little voice in the back of my head. I'm like, I wonder if they listen to this, how are they going to feel? And then then reality kicks in. It's like, oh yeah, they're not going to listen to this. Isn't that amazing? The people that you should be closest with are the ones that listen the least.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and just wrap this up. And right now, again, we appreciate each other and being able to have this blunt conversation. And I know that we would love for all of you guys who are listening to subscribe to each of our podcasts and be able to share with your friends and family members of those who you know need to listen to this episode as well. Any last words, guys?
Definitely. No, just, if you guys aren't already subscribed, make sure you subscribe. The Dad's List and A Amongst Men. How often do you guys release your episodes?
Ours are every Sunday, and then we're starting to have some midweek ones come out as well.
Nice. Yeah, mine are every Thursday morning, 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you guys download everything you can.
All right. Tony, anything else?
No.
All right. And we're out.
Short and sweet. So there it is, folks. That was our interview. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Just so you know, you can find Tonio and Jay LeVar at the Dad's List podcast. Should be anywhere you get your podcasts. Now, each of them also have their own contact info. Tonio has, you can reach him at theallaroundlife.com. That's his blog. And Jay LeVar at thedadslist.com. Both of them on social media, Tonio at theallaroundlife and Jay LeVar at the Dad's List. So make sure you guys reach out, follow them, subscribe to the show. They have a great show. They're doing good work out there. And as for us, you know where to reach us at APodAmongstMen@gmail.com with any suggestions, any questions, any comments. We're looking forward to hearing from you. And as always, we're on Instagram at APodAmongstMen. You can find the podcast wherever you get your podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, all that good shit. So, make sure you guys reach out, and we hope you enjoyed it. Until next week, peace.